So, flat 2 damage versus D3 damage. Which is better and why? Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we like to get the most out of our models on the battlefield, and look at some of the reasons why some perform better than others. Today's quick tip video is going to be about damage 2 weapons versus damage D3 weapons, both of which are very common profiles to see throughout the game of 40k. For example, out of the two weapons that I have here, one is a Powerfist. Standard, it will have a damage D3 profile. On your Space Marines, it will cost you 9 points. The other is a Chainfist, which has 1 more AP better than the Powerfist, but it has a flat damage 2 profile. Now, even if they had the same AP value, that Chainfist would outperform the Powerfist in a lot of situations, despite the fact that the average roll on a D3 weapon is 2 damage. So the average roll is the same, it just varies a bit. So let's look at some specific examples. Firstly, the most intuitive example are 2 wound infantry. Obviously, every single Chainfist hit you get through is going to kill a 2 wound infantry for certain. With Powerfists, you only have a 2/3 chance of killing a 2 wound infantry model. If you roll a 1, then the next Powerfist attack, no matter what it rolls, will only be finishing off that 1 wounded model. This all maths out to mean that if you're hitting a unit with multiple Chainfist attacks or multiple Powerfist attacks, then the Chainfist attacks are roughly 1/3 more valuable than the Powerfist attacks. Now that's absolutely massive, particularly considering they cost about the same points. The next example is on Feel No Pain type save units. Say we're hitting some Plague Bearers. Again, the chance of rolling a 1 on that Powerfist damage roll means that more Plague Bearers are going to pass their 5-up Feel No Pain type saves. Each Chainfist attack will kill a simple 8 out of every 9 Plague Bearers who fail their invul saves. But the Powerfist is very slightly less, at only killing about 5 out of every 6 of the Plague Bearers, so a small win for the damage 2 weapon there. On larger units, the damage 2 Chainfists are just a little bit more reliably consistent than the Powerfists, due to the Powerfist attacks giving you that extra chance to roll extra high or extra low. In general, most people would prefer to have the reliability of knowing exactly what your weapon's going to do when you shoot at the targets, or indeed with this example, when you punch the targets. But sometimes that random variance can be helpful. Sure, you might have a round where you roll a lot of 1s and you don't kill the targets that the Chainfists would have easily killed, but then you might have had another very lucky round where you roll a bunch of 3s and the Powerfist managed to off a target that might have been literally impossible for the same number of Chainfist attacks to take down. So there are swings and roundabouts with this. It just means that you will have a lot more random damage output with the Powerfists. On the whole though, again I'd say that this is a slight win for the Chainfists, because having random high damage spikes increases your risk of overkilling the target, and therefore having all of your extra Powerfist high rolls wasted. For example, if you were targeting something with 6 wounds and got 4 attacks through, it wouldn't really matter whether or not the Powerfist rolled extra high and did 12 damage to it, it's still dead either way. But it would matter if they rolled extra low and only did 4 damage to it, and the target would survive, but the Chainfist would just kill it either way. Now if we compare against 3 wound infantry, the Powerfists actually have a very slightly higher damage output in this case. This is mainly due to the chance of rolling a 3 insta-killing that 3 wound model, and you only have a 1 in 9 chance of having to roll 3 dice to bring down the same model. So 1/3 of the time it's better than the Chainfists, and 1/9 of the time it'll be worse, which put D3 damage weapons at an overall win against 3 wound infantry. Again, however, the opposite is true when you're targeting 4 wound infantry, as obviously the damage 2 weapons kill them very efficiently, as 4 is a multiple of 2. One scenario where the Powerfists do have an advantage though is when you target a unit that either reduces the damage of incoming attacks or halves the damage of incoming attacks. 2 common examples are the Ironstone for Iron Hands players, or Genestealer Cult Aberrants. Both of those will reduce the damage by 1, which is terrible for Chainfists, putting them on flat damage 1 all the time. But if Powerfists roll at 3, then it puts them ahead and puts them at 2 damage 1/3 of the time. The same can be said of half damage units, such as the Duty Eternal stratagem on Space Marine Dreadnoughts, where again if you roll at 3 with the Powerfist, it only puts them down to 2 damage as you round up, so that's a win there. A very similar story plays out with flat 3 damage weapons versus D6 damage weapons. Say for example a Storm Strike missile from a Space Marine Storm Raven versus a standard Crack missile. The Crack missile has D6 damage and the Storm Strike has a flat 3. Now the Crack missile will actually have a slightly higher average damage output than the Storm Strike, because the average roll on a D6 is 3.5. so that's slightly higher than the flat 3. So against big targets where you're going to have to be hitting them multiple times with these weapons, the crack missiles are slightly better in a vacuum, if we're just talking about the damage. But similar maths comes into play when you're looking at infantry units. If you're targeting 2 wound infantry, then obviously the flat 3 damage is always going to be better, because there's a 1 in 6 chance that you won't kill them with the crack missile, where you will always kill them with a storm strike missile, provided you get the wound through. The same is even more true when you look at 3 wound infantry, because every strike will be using every point of damage that storm strike has to offer, and 1/3 of the time the crack missile won't kill a 3 wound infantry man in one shot. When we get to 4 wound infantry though, the crack missile will win out handily, because it will kill one of those instantly half the time, compared with the flat 3 damage weapon, which will never kill one in one shot. They'll always need 2 shots and waste a lot of their damage output. So probably the overall take home of this video is that random damage weapons are generally just as good, if not better, against big targets, and targets that either half or reduce the damage characteristic. Flat 2 damage weapons are better against 2 wound and 4 wound infantry, and flat 3 damage weapons are better against 2 wound and 3 wound infantry, compared with their random damage counterparts, of course. We'll round off with a small math hammer triumph. It took me quite a while, but I think I've managed to work out how much more efficient a damage D3 weapon is than a damage 2 weapon against 3 wound infantry. And my answer is 29% more efficient, provided you're hitting them with repeated attacks at the same profile. And I think that was about the most complicated piece of maths I've ever done for Warhammer 40k. Shame it was calculating a very niche scenario to work out exactly which sort of weapon's the most efficient against a very specific target. Oh well. As always, thanks for listening to an Auspex Tactics video. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more similar content. Most of it's more interesting than this, because it talks about actual models and units on the battlefield, rather than a ton of abstract numbers. Thanks again for listening. I'll hope to see you guys next time.